What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. In a long-running series like Pokemon, you're bound to see them revisiting a few ideas now and again, including the Pokemon themselves. And like we saw with the first generation, when you wait long enough, you could see most Pokemon getting touch-ups now and again, leaving only a few that have stayed the same without participating in any of the new gimmicks across the decades. You might think that this is a uniquely Kanto phenomenon, but Johto has a fair share of upgrades for Pokemon. If I had made this list at the start of last year, I could have included the likes of Ursaring, Quagsire, Stantler, or Girafarig, but all of those are squarely off limits now in examining the best static members of the roster. But I should point out that I will not be counting any Pokemon that are the update. Like, sure, Crobat is a great Pokemon, somehow still having a unique typing that hasn't seen any special treatment since it was introduced, but it was made to be the update to the Golbat line. And of course, since every Pokemon gets new moves and abilities, something like that isn't enough to warrant preferred status, even if Wobbuffet is much better with Shadow Tag. The only exception I'll rule out is the Snubbull line, since becoming pure Fairy type totally threw out all of its old type matchups, rather than just some of them. So that is substantial enough to me. But even with so many other Johto Pokemon getting attention over the years, the legendaries included, there are plenty of other options that have remained as they are, but still maintain a useful status. Starting with number 6, Zatu. Some people seem to completely forget Zatu, while others are weirdly fixated on it, but I think it's safe to say that Zatu is a fairly neglected Pokemon, even from the beginning, since this is another of those Pokemon that I hear often for people to mistake as a Hoenn newcomer, because that was the first time they ever saw it. They never even found one in Johto. And ever since, it's been just as rare or more, mostly being stuck behind friend safaris or mirage spots or swarm encounters, never even making the shortlist for a possible mega or regional form or anything else. So maybe if Zatu were actually found early enough to use, people might realize that it's a decent Pokemon. Not that it matters all that much because it's not in Gen 9 at all, but Zatu is more of a sleeper pick, since the Psychic type is pretty good, and its special attack and speed are just shy of 100, so it can hit sneakily hard and fast. But Zatu is also a bird that's full of tricks. The only direct attack that it learns after evolving is Psychic. The rest of its moveset is filled with the likes of Psycho Cut, Miracle Eye, Confuse Ray, Wish, Power Swap, Future Sight, Me First, and so many more through outside means. I'm not personally that good with these more utility-focused Pokemon, but plenty of people love all the little facets that Zatu can unlock installing or supporting a team. And let's not forget the Magic Bounce ability that automatically reflects back anything from Intimidate to a Leech Seed to those annoying Stealth Rocks just by Zatu existing on the field. Again, Zatu may be fine in a standard playthrough, but it's rarely provided, and really this pensive bird shines in specific niche gimmick teams that require precise tactics. So it may not be in everyone's taste, but the less you know about this bird, the more likely it is to destroy you with some obscure and absurd strategy. Number 5, Miltank. Listen, as much as we might hate to admit it, Miltank is not a bad Pokemon even to this day. I thought about putting Smeargle here because of its ridiculous uses, but it has been nerfed a little bit, and besides, it's a lot harder to make effective use of Sketch in a playthrough, since casual playing is just as big a factor, if not more so, than competitive. But Miltank can be useful for both. As you've no doubt heard, Miltank was the bane of everyone's existence back in Gen 2. Some people like to claim it's not that hard, but there's a reason for the meme, guys. Miltank has high defense with almost equal speed and HP barely behind that. Good thing its only weakness is basically 100% physical, right? And even if you do manage to whittle down its health to take it out, it naturally learns Milk Drink to heal itself right back up. No need to bother with potions at all, or, the Moo Moo Milk item that it originates either. And then of course it gets powerful normal moves that can flinch or paralyze, or even cure status conditions, which means that you don't really have to choose on whether or not you want to be a battering ram, or a wall, or a cleric, because Miltank is kind of generalized enough to do it all, but not in a way that heavily impedes any one category. You might say that its breeding with Tauros is some attention that it's gotten, but tons of different Pokemon can breed with others all the time. I mean, I got an egg from a Psyduck and a Luxray. That doesn't make the Luxray an update to the Psyduck line. I think a major reason that Miltank is so notorious is because it's got base stats pushing 500 so early in the game. But if you can get one on your side later, you can take advantage of the dozens and dozens of other moves in its arsenal through TMs or move tutors, so it may not be anybody's favorite, but you can't ignore Miltank when it rolls onto the scene. Number 4. Lantern. It's always been a little strange to me how early Chinchou and Lantern are in the decks when you can't find them near the baby Pokémon, but once you can finally surf or fish one out, a Chinchou could actually help you a lot in your journey. Firstly, the typing of water-electric was totally unique at the time when introduced, and it leaves these fish only weak to grass and ground. Well, ground is obviously taken care of by the stab water attacks, and pretty soon after it evolves, it naturally gets Signal Beam to help mitigate any grass threats. Or, like any fish worth their saltwater, just teach it Ice Beam to take out both of its weaknesses. But worry not, because even if you do get hit, Lantern's HP is ridiculously high, meaning that it can take a surprising amount of punishment. Seriously, its HP is tied with Kyurem. But on top of that, Lantern also has the choice of Volt Absorb or Water Absorb as an ability, so nobody knows which type to avoid using against you for fear of healing you instead, with further threats of Stockpile or Aqua Ring. Now, it is true that sitting around for a long time doesn't really matter if you can't fight back, but while Lantern may not be the most powerful attacker, it can certainly provide its fair share of damage. Like when I was using a Floatzel on my Soul Silver team, but picked up a Lantern anyway, and it made itself indispensable despite the redundant typing. So it may not be the most exciting hard hitter, but if you need a steady, reliable force on your team for a game, or even some competitions that I've seen, maybe you should keep this angler on the hook. Number 3. Forretress. Forretress was never really bad, using one more recently in Crystal has proven that to me, but it was unfortunate enough to live in the shadow of Scizor. Obviously, a sleek new evolution to one of last gen's most popular bug types is going to draw in most people, and when you're stuck with the same exact typing, with a similar color scheme, and pretty well hidden behind headbutt trees, it's a recipe for being overlooked. Also, Scizor has limbs, so it's a bit easier for kids to play with than just a lumpy orb. But I'm not here to dunk on Forretress. We should try and help it out by giving Scizor a Mega Evolution? Yeah, okay, this bagworm has really gotten the worst of it. But if you take the chance on a Forretress, you will likewise get a Pokemon with just one weakness, but with a 140 defense stat. Then of course, if you lean into the competitive side, Forretress is invaluable as a Pokemon that can both set up Stealth Rocks and Spikes, but also Rapid Spin them away, so you don't even have to change Pokemon to do it. But if you're more of a casual player, then you can just chuck it out in most any battle to tank hits left and right, and do respectable to massive damage with even random HMs that you teach it. Sure, there are probably some great ideas that could have been made for a Mega or Gigantamax Forretress or whatever, but it's rather impressive that Forretress has quietly carved out a niche for itself in both sides of the gameplay field. And if you've never tried one, but you need something to sponge up any and all physical hits, you might want to take the time to search out one of these bug-type grenades. Number 2. Feraligatr. It's really totally unfair for Meganium to be in such obvious need of help, but then to completely ignore it and give Typhlosion a new form instead. Anyway, Feraligatr was also left out in the cold, but it's actually still a decent Pokemon. I mean, you could get some pretty sweet regional forms on this Gator for sure, but currently the best thing to ever happen to Feraligatr was the physical special split. This Grinning Croc's highest stat is its attack, although defense isn't far behind, meaning that it couldn't really use any of its water-type moves. But once Gen 4 hit, you could now go for a Waterfall or an Aqua Tail to take full advantage of your best field. Not to mention that it now gets Ice Fang by level up, so you can have a physical ice move to chomp out those threats like we mentioned before. Also, it can be easy to forget, but Croconaw evolves at level 30, so you'll get a fully evolved Pokemon earlier than usual. And perhaps unsurprisingly, this hulking reptile gets in on the Dragon type pretty well, on top of a bunch more physical coverage moves from other types, allowing Feraligatr to pretty effectively solo a good portion of the Johto region if you wanted. Perhaps you think it's unfair to include a starter on this list, but just think about all of its peers that have been given so much over the years, and Feraligatr has been the same as it was ever since day one. Not that that's a bad thing, but the fact that it can hang in there with the other starters, and is a pure water type, mind you, none of this fancy dual typing, makes this alligator one of the most impressive untouched Pokemon out there, whether they intended it to be or not. Number 1. Skarmory. There are few Pokemon that are universally praised, but you would be hard-pressed to find anyone that has a bone to pick with Skarmory. It's a ferocious metal bird that can single-handedly terrorize the skies, easily becoming the dominant species within any given route it may reside. Sometimes Pokemon designs need to be changed over the years with a new gimmick, but nobody has ever looked at Skarmory and thought, this thing needs to look better. But not only is the design of this metallic raptor well made, but its typing is no slouch either. Steel and Flying is one of the most favorable pairings that you could have, completely bypassing the regular threat to ground, and only leaving Fire and Electric for super effective damage, but with 9 other resistances of varying intensity to make sure that you stay airborne for as long as possible. Sure, it may be nice if it got Iron Head or something through level up instead of the lower power and lower accuracy moves that it's currently stuck with, when its flying type attacks are actually pretty decent, but of course that's only if you don't do any outside sourcing. And even then, this Avian Armory once again learns spikes, so you can stack those up if you want, or roar the opponent out to whittle them down, or roost off your own damage, or just defog everything away if you want. I'm not saying that Skarmory has better supporting tricks than Zatu, but when you're a steel type with 140 defense, you're going to be alive long enough to try out whatever you want. I think it's also pretty telling that Gen 9 is the first time that Skarmory has been missing from a region since its introduction, always being found somewhere in each generation. Even in Unova you could find this bladed bird. Not bad for a Pokemon that started as a version exclusive. Not many can break that mold, but Skarmory shattered it. And you know what so many regions means, tons of dex entries with crazy facts about it, detailing how people make sharp swords from its fallen feathers, and that it can fly at nearly 200 miles per hour. Some Pokemon can be cool, and some can be useful in battle, but Skarmory is that rare breed that's both at the same time. So it's always scary to come across this Razor Falcon, but also so satisfying when you can snag one for yourself. Some unchanged Johto Pokemon stood no chance of making this list, but there are definitely some other solid options that could be considered good in their original state. So which untouched Johto Pokemon do you still think are great? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.